I love this job. Well, guess who's in the building now? As promised, we are joined by Curtis Sliwa, the founder of the Guardian Angels. Good morning, Curtis.
Good morning. It's been a month of Sunday since I last saw you.
Listen, people thought I was bluffing. I first met Curtis Sliwa, and at that time his lovely wife, Lisa. You've heard me talk about the years that I spent at Johnson Publishing Company. I was part of their radio division, and I had a show called 95 Live. And this was back in the 80s. Curtis Sliwa and his wife came on, and that was one of the more intriguing and exciting times I've had on the air, and it's certainly a pleasure to have you back.
Well, I was jawboning then, and I'm jawboning now. Although I drink Geritol and take Bengay baths.
No. You're in great shape as always, and we thank you for coming in. I'm going to pick your brain, and you've got a colleague with you who's been with us before. Who's in the building with you?
Oh, it's Miguel Fuentes. He's our national director, but he heads our Chicago operation, better known as Third Rail.
Okay. Miguel, let me share this with you. I was on the Blue Line yesterday, and I've told you and Thomas Hunt and Franklin, I've told members of the Angels how I feel more secure when I know that your members are on the train. And even if they aren't in a car per se, just on the platform or in the vicinity, I feel better. I feel safer. I feel more secure. For the people that haven't heard you and I converse before, and I'm so glad that you brought Curtis in with you today because I've got a ton of questions. But I was on the Blue Line yesterday, and the last time you and I talked on the phone, a young man was shot on the Blue Line on the Pulaski platform, and we talked that same morning. And as the Blue Line, I was coming from the west back into the city. I live on the west side, and I just had kind of a weird feeling as we approached the Pulaski stop. I'm thinking, this is where a man got shot recently. But at the same, just as I thought that, one of your members was going from car to car. A young brother. I mean, he was young, had his backpack on. You could tell he was full of vigor and pride. And every car that he stopped in, he would take time to look out the door and make sure everything was secure before he proceeded to the next car. My point being, you've heard me talk about my personal feelings toward you and your colleagues and how you make me feel more secure. But I thought it was ironic that you guys are coming in today, and just yesterday, this young brother was on the cars yesterday, and as we approached that Pulaski stop, I'm thinking, the Guardian Angels are out in even greater numbers.
Well, first of all, thank you for the compliment. Thanks for the time here on the radio station. And that's what
I wanted to get his name, but he had already moved to the next car.
Well, that's what we do. When we get on the train, we float through the cars to make sure. Sometimes the CTA is running 8 cars, so we make sure we float because you never know what can happen. At the same time, at every stop, we get off the train and we stick our head out. We make sure the platform is secure, and then we continue patrolling.
We're speaking with the founder of the Guardian Angels, Mr. Curtis Sliwa, and your national director. See, I always have to double check to make sure I get Miguel's title correct because he is doing big things, and I feel kind of an extra twinge of pride because you're a localite. You're from Chicago.
Correct.
For the people that haven't heard us talk in the past, and I want to come back to Curtis in a second, for first-time listeners, people who are listening for the first time today, Miguel, tell us what prompted you. What was the turning point? What was the change in your life where you said, as a young person, I want to become a Guardian Angel?
Well, I had seen him on TV. I actually had seen him on the CTA here in the mid-'80s. And one day in '88, Curtis Sliwa was in town. And him and about 12 other Guardian Angels boarded the subway train. And he just happened to be on board the train that I was on. And I had always been interested in and wanting to get more information about the Guardian Angels. So I came up to Curtis. I asked him, how can I get involved? He gave me a brochure. I didn't know it was Curtis Sliwa at the time. He gave me a brochure. I opened it up. There was a picture of himself with the history of the group. I had a few stops to take a look at it. And I asked the gentleman, which was Curtis, is this you on the picture? He said, yeah. So I didn't put 2 and 2 together. I got off the train. I called the number on the flyer. I signed up and went through the interview process, the training process, and I just fell in love with the group. And this was in November 1st of 1988.
Okay. Please tell us, Curtis. I know the story, but I want you to share with our listeners because it's really something special to have you in our studios. Tell us what prompted you to found the organization.
Well, this goes back 32 years, 1979. I'm a night manager of Mickey D's in the Bronx. I had not gotten my certificate of graduation from Ronald McDonald University in Oak Brook, Illinois.
Yeah.
I was there simply because I could take care of thugs. It's the South Bronx, 79. I mean, it was totally out of control. Gangs in the streets, mayhem in the subways. And the city was sliding into the abyss. There have been documentaries, there have been whole movies done about how the Bronx was burning. And so, being a single guy at the time, I heard all the arguments that were being made. There were cutbacks in the budget, as we see now, because of the fiscal restraint that the country is going through. They were laying off cops. They were closing certain subway lines at certain times. But I saw that the criminal element was taking full advantage. And after I would work all night into the wee hours of the morning with my closing crew to close that Mickey D's, that McDonald's, I'd have to go all the way back to Brooklyn, where I was living, which was renamed Crooklyn. And I had that Ronald McDonald's jacket on with the M stamped all over my body. So I get on the subway, like everybody else who's working swing shift, and I notice about halfway into the ride, always there'd be some young men singing doo-wop a cappella. I said, oh, subway musicians, this is great. And they'd be singing, Manhattan makes it and Brooklyn takes it. And for some reason, I guess they thought those golden arches were an ATM machine, because they'd always be looking at me. And almost simultaneously, everybody else in that subway car would get up and move out, because they knew I was being victim. I was going to be a victim. And they moved in on me, and I would launch a preemptive strike, because I got a little bit of street smarts. I'm not going to go down for the count. And I'd grab some of these guys, and I'd take them down, and I'd pull the emergency cord, and I'd wait there for the police to arrive after they were pounding their donuts and finally busting their shoes and get there. And they would look at me and go, oh, you're a DT, what precinct? I said, no, I'm not a cop. I'm a McDonald's manager. I said, well, what are you doing? I just made a citizen arrest. These guys tried to yoke me. They tried to rob me. You can't do that. That's a vigilante act. You've been watching too many of these Bronson and Death Wish movies. I said, no, I didn't shoot anybody. I grabbed these two guys. They tried to yoke me. They tried to... And so naturally it would work itself up the chain. The sergeant, the lieutenant, the captain didn't want to deal with it. The district attorney didn't want to deal with it. But I just stood to the principles. And eventually they would have to deal with it through the criminal justice system. But that wasn't deterring anybody. Standing there with the golden arches on my jacket wasn't stopping anybody from committing crime. But it certainly gave me an idea what could be done. Since I had a closing crew, I put the arm on them. I conscripted them in. I said, oh, you're going to be riding with me on the trains into Brooklyn into the wee hours of the morning.
So you had a united front.
Oh, united, but not because they were volunteering. So I was able to convince 13. It was tough times because that was exactly at the time that Paramount released the movie The Warriors, which has become a cult classic, about gangs on the subways. So everyone thought that we were either the Hells Angels, Charlie's Angels, Vigilantes, or Warriors come out to play. And so it made a tough time that much worse. The mayor was opposed to us. The police chief wanted us arrested, of which I was arrested 76 times in the first 13 years alone, sometimes just for breathing air. And the police unions felt that our presence would jeopardize their job security. So I thought, wow, we were doing a good thing. I'm going to get pats on the shoulder so hard I'm going to have to get a chiropractic adjustment tomorrow. And instead I was getting the silver bracelets and oftentimes a wooden shampoo on the way to the hoosegow by the police, who viewed us as adversaries, as gangbangers, because we were young, white, black, Hispanic, Asians, and they were so used to dealing with young people as they would call them, mutts and skells, degenerates in society. They couldn't believe that somebody unarmed in a red beret, looking like a poppin' fresh Pillsbury doughboy, would go into the subways voluntarily with no special powers or privileges, risk their life to protect people they didn't know. So in their minds, this is a ruse. This is a con job. They're using this for an ulterior motive. And they were out to prove their theory to be correct. It took 13 years until eventually Rudy Giuliani became mayor of the city. He said, no mas, no more of this. We're embracing the guardian angels the same way we do Block Watch and Crime Watch and auxiliaries. And then we began to grow. And now we're in 14 countries, 140 cities, with close to 5,000 members all over the world. But the first 13 years, the terrible 13 we referred to it. It was a baptism in fire.
What kept you inspired to continue?
Results. We would actually target certain subway lines, certain neighborhoods where people had come to the McDonald's to invite us. And we could see a noticeable difference, even with the police not working in solidarity with us. And that just fueled my desire to continue to give everyone else an opportunity who wanted to become a guardian angel or help the guardian angels to give them a decent quality of life. They were entitled to it. This is America, the land of the free, the home of the brave. Guys were increasingly acting less brave, more like thugs, and people didn't have the freedom to walk the streets in our own country where we would send men and women off to die for somebody else's freedom. So to me, it was all convoluted, and I just decided to make a final stand.
All right. Can you take some calls from our listeners?
Oh, absolutely.
Here's our number, 591 V-103, in the building. In fact, back for a return visit. The National Director of the Guardian Angel, Chicago-based. You've heard him on with us before. He's back for a return visit. My main man, Miguel Fuentes, and the founder of the Guardian Angels, Mr. Curtis Sliwa. You just heard from him. I want to hear from you. Phones are open, 312-591-V103.